They say that some doors should never be opened, some places should remain untouched. But what happens when curiosity gets the better of us? This isn't a tale of folklore or urban legends. This is something much darker, because this story is true. This is the story of the Riley family, a family just like any other who wanted a fresh start, a quiet life away from the city. They'd grown tired of the hustle and bustle, the constant noise and the never-ending rush of urban life. The Rileys longed for peace, for a place where they could reconnect with nature and each other. They dreamed of a simpler existence, where the days were slower and the nights were filled with the sounds of crickets and the rustling of leaves. But when they moved into that farmhouse, they had no idea, no warning, that something sinister was lurking within its walls, waiting for them. The house, with its creaky floors and drafty windows, held secrets that had been buried for decades. The Rileys were unaware of the dark history that shrouded their new home, a history that was about to resurface in the most terrifying way. The once welcoming facade of the farmhouse began to change, revealing its true nature as the days went by. It all started as a dream. The farmhouse was cheap, almost too good to be true. The price was a steal, and the Rileys couldn't believe their luck. They had found a place that seemed perfect for their new beginning. The house stood alone in a vast expanse of land, surrounded by fields and forests, offering the privacy and tranquility they had been searching for. It was an opportunity they couldn't pass up, despite the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. It was perfect, a little rundown, sure, but they were excited. The Rileys saw potential in every corner of the old house. They envisioned cozy family dinners by the fireplace, lazy afternoons in the sunlit living room, and countless memories to be made. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work, eager to transform the farmhouse into their dream home. The kids ran through the halls, their laughter echoing off the walls, while the parents smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and hope. They thought they'd found a hidden gem. The Rileys were proud of their new home, believing it to be a sanctuary from the outside world. They took photos, shared their excitement with friends and family, and settled into their new life with optimism. The farmhouse, with its rustic charm and picturesque surroundings, seemed like the perfect place to build their future. Little did they know, the house had its own plans. Little did they know, this house had a past, and it was about to make them its next chapter. The Rileys were about to uncover the dark secrets hidden within the walls of their new home. As they delved deeper into the history of the farmhouse, they would come face to face with the malevolent forces that had been lying in wait. The dream of a fresh start would soon turn into a nightmare, as the Riley family became entangled in a web of horror and mystery that would change their lives forever. On their very first night, Emily, the youngest of the Riley family, sensed something was wrong. She'd wake up in the dead of night to the sound of scratching, faint at first, like the claws of a small animal. But as the days passed, the scratching grew louder, more frantic, as if something was desperate to get out. Her parents brushed it off as rats in the walls, told her it was nothing to worry about. But Emily, she knew better. She felt it. Whatever was in those walls, it wasn't just rats. Thomas Riley started noticing strange things too. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. At first he dismissed the odd occurrences as mere coincidences or tricks of his mind. But soon, the strange happenings became too frequent and too unsettling to ignore. Lights would flicker when he walked past, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. It was as if the house itself was trying to communicate with him, sending cryptic signals through the flickering bulbs. Doors would creak open even though he was sure he'd locked them. The sound of the creaking hinges echoed through the empty halls, a haunting reminder that he was not alone. Each time it happened, a chill ran down his spine, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. And then, one night, as he was working late, he heard it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable, calling his name from down the hall. The whisper was so soft that he almost thought he imagined it, but the way it lingered in the air made his heart race. The voice was soft, like a breeze, but there was something chilling in the way it said his name. It was as if the very air around him had turned cold, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that he couldn't ignore. He tried to convince himself it was just the wind, until he saw it. His eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the message that had appeared before him. "Leave before it's too late." The words were scrawled in the dust on the window, clear and deliberate. It was as if someone or something was trying to warn him of impending danger. At first he thought it was a prank, maybe some dust shifted by the breeze. He tried to rationalize it, to find a logical explanation for the inexplicable message, but as he traced the letters with his finger, a wave of dread washed over him. The message felt too real, too intentional. It was as if the house itself was alive and it was trying to tell him something. The sense of urgency in the message was palpable, and he knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. The warning was clear, and the fear that gripped him was unlike anything he had ever felt before. The Rileys tried to ignore the signs, tried to pretend everything was normal, but every night the house grew more restless. The sounds of footsteps in the empty attic, the feeling of cold hands brushing against their skin, the sudden chills that left them breathless. Sarah, the mother, started seeing things that weren't there. Dark shadows lurking in the corners of her vision, disappearing as soon as she looked directly at them. The house felt alive, like it was breathing, watching, waiting. Then came the night that changed everything. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when the house began to shake, violently, as if something beneath it was trying to rise to the surface. The walls creaked, the lights flickered, and a low, guttural sound echoed through the halls, sending chills down their spines. They could hear footsteps, slow and heavy, approaching from the darkness. It was as if the house itself had come alive, consumed by an ancient, malevolent force. They knew they had to leave, but the house wasn't ready to let them go. Desperate, they decided to escape in the dead of night. The house had been their home for years, but now it felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in on them, and every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down their spines. They knew they had to leave before it was too late. They grabbed only what they could carry, not daring to look back. Each item they packed was a reminder of the life they were leaving behind, the children's toys, the family photos, all left behind in their haste. The urgency of the moment left no room for sentimentality, but as they reached the door, it slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic set in as they realized the house was not going to let them go easily. The door, once a symbol of freedom, now stood as an impenetrable barrier. They pounded on it, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew thick, stifling, as if the house itself was suffocating them. It was as if the very walls were alive, breathing down their necks, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. The oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on their chests, and they struggled to stay calm. And then they heard it, a voice, deep and malevolent, whispering from the shadows, "You cannot leave." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing through the halls. It was a voice that chilled them to the bone, a voice that promised doom. With a final, desperate push, Thomas broke the door open and they ran into the night, leaving everything behind. The cool night air hit their faces, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. They didn't stop running until they were far away, their hearts pounding in their chests. When they looked back, the house stood still, silent, as if mocking them. It loomed in the darkness, a silent sentinel watching their escape. It was as if the house knew they would never truly be free of it, that it would haunt their dreams forever. It had let them go, but not without leaving a scar. The memory of that night would stay with them, a constant reminder of the terror they had faced. The house, with its dark history and malevolent presence, had marked them, and they knew they would never be the same again. The Rileys never returned to the farmhouse. They refused to speak of what they saw, what they felt, but the fear lingered in their eyes. And the house, it still stands, waiting, biding its time for the next family to enter. So, if you ever find yourself in a place where the shadows seem a little too dark, where the silence feels heavy and the air grows cold, remember the Rileys and ask yourself, is it just your imagination? Or is something waiting for you? End screen. Do you believe in haunted houses? Tell us in the comments below if you dare.